They almost went bankrupt selling playing cards. And somehow, they ended up creating the most beloved video game company on the planet. This is the story of Nintendo. And it is wilder than any game they ever made. It is 1889. America is still stitching itself together. The Dakotas, Montana, and Washington are not even official states yet. London is in a panic trying to catch Jack the Ripper. Thomas Edison's team is secretly experimenting with moving pictures. And halfway around the world, in the ancient city of Kyoto, Japan, a man named Fusajiro Yamauchi opens a small workshop and starts making playing cards by hand. Nobody could have predicted it. Not him, not anyone. But that tiny little card shop would one day give the world Mario, Luigi, Donkey Kong, and the Game Boy. For decades, Nintendo just made cards. And honestly, it was a solid business. Simple, steady, reliable. But by the 1950s, the writing was on the wall. The world was changing fast. Playing cards alone were not going to cut it. So they started experimenting. In 1949, a 21-year-old named Hiroshi Yamauchi took over as president of Nintendo. He was young, he was bold, and he had absolutely no intention of playing it safe. Under his leadership, Nintendo tried everything. They sold ramen noodles, they ran a taxi service, they made a tiny toy robot vacuum cleaner. Some of it worked, most of it did not. But Yamauchi kept pushing. He was not looking for comfort. He was looking for the future. By the 1960s and 70s, Nintendo started drifting toward electronics. And by the end of the 70s, they had released a home version of Pong and started to see something exciting on the horizon: video games. In 1979, they jumped in hard. Arcade games, Sheriff, Space Fever, Radar Scope, they were swinging for the fences. But Radar Scope flopped in America. Badly. Nintendo of America was sitting on a warehouse full of unsold machines and zero answers. So Yamauchi called up a young artist in Japan, a quiet, creative guy named Shigeru Miyamoto. He handed him the failure and said, "Fix it." What Miyamoto created from those ashes was a barrel-throwing gorilla, a little jumping man in a red cap, and a princess waiting to be saved. He called it Donkey Kong. Released in 1981, it became Nintendo's first massive hit, and that little jumping man? His name was Mario. The timing could not have been better. America was obsessed with video games. Arcades were everywhere. The Atari 2600 had been out since 1977. By 1982, around 100 companies were fighting for a piece of the industry. Arcade games alone were pulling in $27 billion in revenue. And then it all collapsed. 1983. The great video game crash. It happened fast, and it was brutal. Too many companies chasing money. Too many terrible games flooding the market. Customers stopped trusting the whole industry. Demand fell off a cliff. Atari lost $536 million in a single year. They literally dumped truckloads of unsold game cartridges into a landfill in the New Mexico desert. The American video game market was declared dead. But Nintendo was not done. While the American market was in ruins, Nintendo released something in Japan called the family computer, the Famicom. It sold incredibly well there. And 2 years later, in 1985, they brought a redesigned version to America. They called it the Nintendo Entertainment System, the NES. But here is the genius move. They did not call it a video game console. They called it a toy. Because nobody was buying video game consoles. But parents were still buying toys. It worked. By 1987, Nintendo controlled 65% of the hardware market. While Atari was collapsing and the industry was still in recovery, Nintendo was quietly rebuilding the entire thing from scratch. And Super Mario Bros. Was leading the charge. For 3 years, Nintendo was untouchable. Then Sega showed up with the Genesis and said, "Hold on, the console wars had begun." Nintendo responded the way they always do. Not by panicking, by innovating. 1989, the Game Boy, a portable gaming device you could carry in your pocket. It was a revolution. 1990, the Super Nintendo. More power, better games, a whole new generation. Nintendo was on top of the world again. But then came the Virtual Boy in 1995. A clunky, headache-inducing red-screen disaster that nobody wanted. It was discontinued within a year. Even legends stumble. They bounced back with the Nintendo 64. Then the GameCube in 2001. But by now, Sony and Microsoft had entered the game. The PlayStation and the Xbox were here, and they were playing hardball. Bigger hardware, bigger budgets, bigger everything. And Nintendo made a decision that shocked the industry. They stopped trying to outmuscle their competitors entirely. No more raw power wars. Instead, they would chase something nobody else was chasing: pure fun. 2004 brought the DS. Dual screens, touch controls, something completely different. It became a massive global hit. And then in 2006, they released the Wii. The Wii was unlike anything the gaming world had ever seen. Motion controls, living room fitness games, grandmothers playing bowling in their kitchens. Children and parents and grandparents all together on the same couch. Nintendo had not just made a gaming console, they had made a cultural moment. It sold over 100 million units. But success can make you overconfident. In 2012, Nintendo released the Wii U, and it bombed. Confusing design, poor marketing. Nobody knew what it was supposed to be. Sales were devastating. The company posted losses. Stock prices dropped. Critics began writing their obituaries. And then, like they have done so many times before, Nintendo took that failure and turned it into fuel. In 2017, they released the Nintendo Switch, a console you could play at home on your TV and then snap out of the dock and take with you anywhere. Home console and handheld in one device. The idea had been quietly developing from the ashes of the Wii U. It sold 45 million units in less than 3 years. It revived the company completely. From playing cards in 1889 to the Nintendo Switch in 2017, from near bankruptcy to global dominance, from ramen noodles to Mario Kart. Nintendo has been knocked down more times than almost any company in history. And every single time, they got back up, not by chasing what everyone else was doing, but by remembering the one thing they were always, at their core, trying to create: fun. That is the whole secret. That has always been the whole secret. If this story hit you, subscribe. There is plenty more where that came from.